rather poignant task of closing the conference. I think we've been incredibly lucky to have a conference where we started with such an aspirational message from Heather and closed with the real progress that has been made here in the States. And I think it's an enormously hopeful message for us. And one of the things I was struck by during the conference was actually a remark from Caroline Edwards that we are really part of a renaissance in scholarly communication. And I feel that we are incredibly lucky to be part of this. And to go back to what Heather spoke at the beginning, that we are really a social movement. And the impact of what we can do collectively is so much greater than what we can achieve individually. And I thought the concept that she had of collective impact was incredibly powerful and is a way to bring all of the different goals and stakeholders and stories that we have as part of this movement together. And I know that Claudio felt that was a weakness, these different goals. But actually, it contributes to different parts of the puzzles and the narrative. And Heather's point was that despite the diversity among us and what we do, if we keep our mind on the end game, that of public good, then regardless of where we come from, regardless of whether we're commercial or non-commercial, or a platform provider or a society, we can all work towards that end goal. And I think Jerry's talk just now basically encapsulated that. It's about the greater good for society and for science, and it's about engaging the public in that activity as well. There was a comment from the audience early on that there seemed to be a sort of, still a sort of them and us type of polarization within open access. And I think that can be that's so far from the truth. And I think COASP actually epitomizes that. We have many different types of stakeholders. And even on the organizing committee, we have, for this conference, we have commercial publishers, we have open access publishers, and we're all on the same page. And Liz Ferguson from Wiley, I don't know if she's told her bosses we're all on the same page, but we are in complete agreement about these things. And I think that's also a sign of maturity in the open access movement, that we are both working together and seeing the need to work together. And the other thing is that we don't need to all be taking huge steps to make the changes. We can actually take very small steps. And Dario in his talk, and Jennifer Lynn also talked about it. You know, even something like ensuring that the citation data you send to Crossref is made open. Individually, that's a very, very small step. Collectively, that is a massive step. So I really encourage you to do that sort of thing. And one of the other things that Heather said, and I think this can be the motivating force for the movement, is that open access, open is a strategy. It's not an end game in and of itself. And we have to keep thinking, what is it that we are doing? And from each individual's different perspective, open in order to do something. And we've heard lots about that at this conference. We've heard lots of new approaches and tools to managing and handling scholarly open content and disseminating it openly and then being able to discover it. We've also heard about discovery tools such as Wikidata, which exist only because of open science, really. And we've heard different ways that we can support the cost of open science, both across different disciplines, such as the humanities and anthropology, and across different geographic areas, such as Latin America. And across all of these different initiatives and approaches and stakeholders, there have been remarkably consistent themes. And this wasn't planned by the organizing committee. We just try and put together a conference that we hope is interesting. The very strong signals that came across from very disparate talks and stakeholders were remarkable. A huge aspect is about cultural change, and it's about social change. It's about how we give credit to researchers and other people's other individuals participating in that research process, for the diverse array of contributions they provide to science. And it's about how we can change that evaluation system. And so the status quo at the moment, which still relies on publications and impact factors and journals, we all know that has to break down. I think that is the fundamental task that every stakeholder, regardless of where you come from, regardless of whether you're a publisher, a platform provider, or a user, or a researcher, that is the mountain we actually have to tackle. How we can change such an ingrained, almost unconscious bias towards purely just publications, so that we can really evaluate researchers on the contribution they give to science and society. And this is about not just publications, it's about data, it's about software, it's about metadata, it's about the infrastructure and the pipework that will help us navigate across the scholarly communications map. You know, in some ways, we are all 19th century explorers, helping to explore and fill out unknown parts of that map. And that's why I think it can sometimes look as though the movement is quite disparate, with bits of the puzzle being filled in different places without the connecting parts. And it's about policy alignment, and it's so encouraging to see what's happening here in the US and in Europe and elsewhere, and that the stakeholders in those governments are now beginning to talk to each other, because science is a global enterprise, and open science will only work if that pipe work and if those evaluation systems are consistent across the globe. And so we all need to work together to align what we're doing and focus on that end game, which is the public good. Making money per se is not a bad thing. We need to make money if we're to achieve our aims, and if we're to actually transform scholarly communication. And I think it's misguided in a way to set sort of commercial and non-commercial enterprises against each other. There are plenty of commercial open access organizations making large surpluses and putting it to good. And I'm not going to name names, and you know, there's lots of not-for-profits that actually you have to make money. And I think we need to sort of get away from this sort of division between commercial or non-commercial and not-for-profit. And finally, so that's all I want to say about the themes of the conference. But what I want to thank first and foremost is all the speakers who came and gave such great contributions, and the people who provided the posters and prepared them for us. I think it's tremendous, and a lot of them have traveled very far and at their own expense, which shows the commitment that they have towards open access. And I'd also like to say there was a fantastic tweet, and I tried to find it, about the gender diversity of this conference. Something like 18 speakers were female and only 8 male. And we tried very hard, actually, on the organizing committee to get all women. but it's, and no publishers speaking, actually, but it's very hard to do either. I would like to thank River Valley for recording all of the talks, and I know there were some technical issues about the slides, but you can get hold of the slides. They'll be up there in another couple of weeks, and the talks, so hopefully you can go through them again. And I'd like to thank the venue and the staff here who've been enormously helpful, especially at such a large distance, it's worked tremendously well. And I really like the fact that we're eating and speaking in the same place, so that you're not rushing between different halls. And we would like to thank all of the sponsors. The conference couldn't happen based on just registrations alone. We need sponsors in order to make this conference happen. And it's hugely important to COASP that we continue to get such good and generous support. So I'd like to thank CCC for all the drinks, Springer Nature for the dinner last night, which was great, Taylor and Francis, MDPI and Pensoft for tea, coffee and cakes, Hindawi for the bags, PLOS for the Wi-Fi, and the branded lanyards from Crossref, and the pens from Sage. Now that might not sound very exciting, but David Roth was very excited about being able to give pens out. That might say more about him than I'd like to thank the Communications Committee, who have been enormously helpful in both marketing the conference and ensuring that all the social media happens, and sending out the emails, and helping with the, everything from the branded lanyards. And Amy and Elaine were helped in the run-up to the conference, but weren't able to be here. But Katie and Cora have been helping during the conference, which has been fantastic. I'd also like to thank the program committee, although I know I'm on it, but for such a great conference. But I'd particularly like to thank Mark Patterson, who's chaired it for the last 3 years, and despite that, we've done remarkably well. And, I am going to be sorry to see him, but he has been fantastic, and it has been enormous fun. And despite the differences, we do actually agree, and I think that's a great sign. I would also like to thank the 2 people who actually are running the conference this year. First of all, Leila, who has only joined us recently, but has been instrumental. I don't think she sat down for the past 3 days, if anyone's noticed, in helping with the slides. That's been, just being able to recruit her in OASPA has been an enormous help for us, and in particular to Claire, who is the engine room and the throbbing heart of OASPA, without which this conference couldn't or wouldn't happen. And I think often what people don't realize is that, although this conference is small, if we had double or treble the number of people, it would still be the same amount of work for Claire. And the conference is just one aspect. She runs the webinars, the treasury, the board. It is amazing what one person can do. And so actually, I would quite like us just to give her a round of applause before and finally, I'd like to thank all of you for coming to the conference. I know we haven't had it in the States before. We're definitely going to have it here again, and we hope you will come back. We also know from participants that come regularly to Europe for the conferences that they keep coming back, and they have also made an effort to come over to the States this year. And we hope that some of you, and I know it's expensive, will be able to come next year to our conference in Europe. It's either going to be in Lisbon or Edinburgh. Is that right? Probably. We hope to confirm that. And of course, depending on which way the elections go, we might have all of you over there next year. And gratifyingly, we have already had feedback that you have enjoyed the conference. Ilko Ververder, who's on the board, told me personally how much he's enjoyed it. I hope the rest of you have also enjoyed it, and it's not just the board members. And also, I think a lot of us are on the circuit, going to conferences like this, or to ALPS or other publishing conferences. But I think I would encourage you all to go to some of the different conferences that are around there that might not be on your radar. In particular, conferences like Force 11, which are, Melissa Handel is an instrumental part of that, which are helping to create standards and norms around open science and open access. And they really want your participation in those working groups to help set the trajectory for open science. So with that, I think I've finished everything, and I'd like to thank you all very much again and wish you safe travels on your way home.